Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ruth. You're very kind. Let's see if I can share application. Okay. So, okay. So now you are seeing my slides, right? Because I can't see you.
Sí, sí, David, sin
Yes.
problema.
Yeah.
We can see them.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this is very weird because I'm talking to my computer, but
David, something happened to your microphone, the audio. Just when you said that you would be talking to your computer decided it was offensive or something like this.
you can hear me now.
And yes, now.
Yes,
Okay.
now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good start. Okay, so yeah, I was saying that if anyone has something to say in the middle of my talk, something like that, I'm okay with that. But maybe you have to raise your hand. Maybe Ruth or Jordi can say me, hey, there is some question or something like that. Anyway, we can always answer that question at the end of the talk. That's okay. But I'm trying to do this short, but there are many things to say, so maybe it's a bit boring if it's just me talking all the time. Anyway, so as Ruth has said before, my background is about associative learning. So it's about conditioning. You can see this rat in this Skinner box. We also work with humans now. We are very modern doing that. My thesis dissertation was about Q competition, about blocking, and some obscure terms that only we people in associative learning actually understand. And in some point in my career, I started to use event-related potentials to investigate this associative learning phenomenon, the associative learning processes. And why did I decide to do that? Why did I complicate my life doing that? Well, imagine a situation in which you have a stimulus, a response, and an outcome. So the rat see a light, or the student see something on the screen. They have to press a button, and then he or she gets a reward. So in this situation, usually when we study humans in the associative learning field, what we register are like some ratings or questions at the end of the experiment, asking about the strength of these associations. But using EEG, we can take advantage of its temporal resolution, for instance, and we can study these different events, even though they are very close to each other, and see the cognitive processes that are underlying in these different moments of time. So here, for instance, in this paper, what we were interested is in the period of time between the response and the outcome, and also in the processing of the outcome itself. So in order to do that, you need this high temporal resolution to distinguish the activations that are coming from the response, from the time between these two events, and from exclusively from the outcome. And EEGs the EEGs are really good doing that, and other things like fMRI are not that good for these, high temporal resolution things. And also another really good aspect of this technique is that we can study the outcome, for instance, that there's no over responses during the outcome. The outcome can be a feedback or the image of a reward, food, whatever. So we can see what's going on there, what processes are underlying the processing of these outcomes, or the processing of the stimulus. That is what I'm going to talk about today. without any over responses in that moment. And this is very interesting for us, for the people in associative learning, in my opinion. As I said, I'm going to talk now about research on the processing of this discriminative stimulus, which is signaling. Sorry? Oh, I think I heard something. Okay. Which is signaling when a response is going to give us a specific outcome. If you think about that, all the stimuli that surround us are filling with a lot of meanings. They carry a lot of information, and this reinforcement learning situation, stimulus response outcome, is a very important way to give meaning to all these stimuli that are around us. If we get some guy from the 18th century and we carry this person to this ice cream cart, he or she is not going to know nothing about it. Even if they are hungry, they are not going to be able to eat an ice cream there because they don't know that an outcome, the ice cream is there available, and they don't know how to get them. And we learn these meanings with practice, with many years eating ice creams. And also in the other picture, you can see, maybe you didn't see it, but there is a lottery kiosk here. For us, it has...
David?
Yeah.
David, sorry, I think that the presentation is not advancing.
We see a black screen.
We see the research stimulus response outcome.
Okay.
But not the... Maybe try to share the screen. It usually gives less problem.
Okay.
Well, so sorry.
It's all right.
Let's see.
What about now?
Yeah, perfect.
So you didn't see this?
Yes, this one, yes.
Yes, we did. Yeah, this one, yes. It's after this one.
This one?
This is where it stopped.
Yes.
Okay, you can see the ice cream and here the ice cream and the lottery kiosk. Okay,
yeah, now we can see it.
Okay.
And you can click ocultar to remove this banner thing.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. No, thank you. I'm sorry.
No. So what I was saying is that maybe for you, you didn't realize that here there is a lottery kiosk, but for somebody that have gambling problems, maybe this person is trying to quit buying lotteries, this stimulus is quite salient and it carries a different meaning for that person than for us. And this important meaning has been acquired through mostly through reinforcement learning. Okay, so it's interesting to see how these meanings, how this information are learned. So there are at least two very important type of information that we can add to the processing of the stimulus, or we can activate from the processing of the stimulus. One is what outcome is available given that stimulus. Obviously, what is the value of that outcome for us. And also it's important that the discriminative stimulus says to us what response we need to do in order to get that outcome. Okay, so these two pieces of information are really important, and we can start the processing of this information from the first time that we see the stimulus. on our environment or on the screen of an experiment. So my research, the research I'm going to present, is about how we learn these two pieces of information and how they interact each other. This, although I work with students and they are okay, they don't have psychological problems. This research potentially could have some relevance for a number of psychopathologies. We know that in some problems related with the lack of control, with impulsivity, these patients also develop a different way to process some stimuli. For instance, people who have a problem with overeating, they could have like a aberrant attentional response to the stimuli related with the food, and something similar happened with people with a problem of drug abuse, or with gambling problems, or with obsessive compulsive behaviors, etc. So something happened during this reinforcement learning process that give as very relevance to this stimuli that is really hard to change, even when they try to quit smoking or quit or gambling or something like that. And this is probably related with the next part of this introduction, that is how we learn this meaning. Well, we know that we have two different learning systems, which both are supporting reinforcement learning, this kind of learning this kind of information. One of these systems is the habit system, which creates these strong stimulus-response links that we call habits. Once we have created one of these habits, this is very inflexible, but at the same time it's very efficient. So you don't need a lot of cognitive effort to trigger the habits, and it's very rapid, but at the same time it's hard to change, even if you want to. The outcome, the reward, is not very relevant in forming this habit, especially once the habit is formed, because as you can see, it's outside this cached representation of the stimulus and response link. So even if you don't want the outcome anymore, the habit is going to take place all the time that you see the stimulus. And the other system is the goal-directed system, which creates this more complex map of all the events, the stimulus, the response, the outcome, and other possible outcomes, other possible responses. So it's like a map connecting all these possible events and giving value to all these possible responses. This representation of the environment of the reality is more complex, and you need more effort to make decisions using this goal-directed system. But at the same time, it's very flexible, and you can adapt your responses based on your ongoing motivation or the ongoing values of the outcomes. We also know that there are two different neural systems supporting these two psychological neural systems. So on one hand, we have the habit system, which is supported by this sensory motor loop. And for the goal-directed system, there are another network, that is the associative cognitive loop. I'm not going to go into much detail here. So when we see one of these stimulus, this discriminative stimulus in a learning situation, this carries a lot of information about the outcome that is available and the value of that outcome, and also about the response that we need to do in order to get that outcome. And this information in theory could be learned by a goal-directed system or a habitual system. So given this framework, what I did, or what we did, is to study changes in the stimulus processing because of reinforcement learning. We were focused on see how different outcome values of different levels of response-related information could change how we process this stimulus. We also tested if these activations were goal-directed all the time or they could become habitual. And also we studied the interaction between these two systems and these two factors, the outcome value and the response-related information. So are these two informations learned independently or they depend on each other? And these are the three studies that I'm going to tell you. And here are the three papers that you can read if you want to know all the details. All right. So, as I say, first, what we try here is to see if we can detect the processing of the outcome value and the response-related information during the presentation of the stimulus, the first event in this change of the stimulus response outcome. And we use event-related potentials to do that. So our participants did reinforcement learning task. So stimulus response.
David, excuse me 1 second. Sorry,
yeah.
1 second, because Josep Antoni had his hand raised, and okay. I gave him the rights, but I guess he wanted to intervene. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Because he raised his hand, but now I don't see him. Yeah,
Tony, no?
He's there.
Yo tenía una pregunta. I have a question, David. You hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just a clarification. Are we talking here about free-based and model-based reinforcement learning or not?
Well, the free-based and model-based are in theory, are the computation that are supporting the habit and the goal-directed system. So the habit system learn in a model-free way, and the goal-directed system learn in a model-based way.
Okay.
Yeah, but Jonathan Doe and the people that do model-free versus model-based, they use a different type of task because, well, I have my opinion about it. We can talk about that later if you want.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thank you.
Cool. So in this experiment, what we did is to manipulate the outcome value and also the response information that each stimuli carried. So it's two factors here. For that, we have this stimulus response outcome task. But in every trial, we presented two different stimuli. We'll see that in the task in 1 second. From this pair of stimuli, only one was relevant in order to know which response was correct. So the other was redundant, okay? So this is the design. We, associative learning people, really love our designs. Quite easy. You can see here that the PSH stimulus, the meaning of that is predictive stimulus high value, PSH. Every time in which this stimulus was on the screen, the correct response was the first one, R1. So this is a predictive stimulus because you can know, you know which one is the correct response, just to see into that. And it's a high value stimulus because you see that you can get 100 points from them. The NPS stimulus is a non-predictive one because half of the time that we present that stimulus, the response was 1, but the other half was 2. So you don't know which one is going to be just looking at that stimulus. Also, we have the outcome value manipulation. So we have high value stimulus that if you make the correct response, you get a lot of points. At the low value stimulus that if you make the correct response, you get only 1 point. It's good, but it's not as good as the other. So 3 different types of stimuli: the predictive high value, predictive low value, and the non-predictive. Okay, the predictive high value and the predictive low value have different outcome value, and these 2 different stimuli have more response information than the non-predictive stimuli. And it is even more complicated, but I'm not going to. It's probabilistic, blah blah blah. But just let it that way. This is the task that we use. You can see that we presented the 2 stimuli in a sequence. Everything was contrabalanced or randomized. So that was control. And only one of these 2 stimuli were related with the correct response, asterisk or circle. And if you make the correct response, you get your points in the outcome. It's actually quite simple. And the reward was money. And so we have here all 4 types of trials here. And you can see in the response that the participants learn all the associations. This is accuracy. They get really good at that. And response time goes down, but we don't have here any significant result, just the effect of training. But when we see the EEG data, again, remember that this is during the processing of the stimulus. What you can see is a really rapid effect around 150 milliseconds after the presentation of the stimulus. And this effect distinguishes between the predictive stimuli and the non-predictive. It doesn't matter the value, it's just predictive versus not predictive, as it says here. After that, we had a long time window in which the factor that was more important was the value, because the predictive high value stimulus had a different activity, was more positive than the other 2. So it seems that the response information was no longer relevant here, just the value of the outcome. And after that, the activity that we measured in the last part of the presentation of the stimulus distinguish it between the 3 types of trials. So the PS high was larger, the PS low was slower than the high, but larger than the non-predictive. So somehow the 2 factors were integrated at this moment. This is a bit hard to see because there are lots of overlapping activities. So we did a PCA analysis. When we analyze the factors of the PCA, we see the same. We see here the first factor that is distinguished between predictive and non-predictive stimuli. The second one from a high value from the others. And the third one distinguishes the 3 conditions. So what is happening here is during this 800 milliseconds, first, the response information is activated. So this is like the really rapid predictiveness effect. After that, the outcome value is activated. And after that, somehow these 2 things are integrated at the end of the presentation of the stimulus. So we have that both factors actually modulated the processing of the stimulus. It seems that their information related with the response was more rapid than related with the outcome. But both of these effects occurred very rapid, around 200, 250 in 250 milliseconds, we had the outcome value effect. In 150 milliseconds, we had the response effect. So maybe some of them are reflecting like some kind of attentional perceptual gain. We are not sure about that, but it's a possibility. And by the end of the presentation of the stimulus, it seems that the response and the value of the outcome are somehow integrated. My guess is that the participant is preparing the response. So it's like activating the response and is putting more effort doing that if the response is going to lead to a high value outcome. So this way you need these two sources, these two pieces of information together in order to make the response. Okay. So we have this very rapid outcome value effect during the stimulus in our first study. And this is kind of interesting because think about it. This is an outcome value effect that is evident during the presentation of the stimulus. So this could happen at least in two ways. It could be that, okay, the participants see the stimulus and they activate like a mental representation of the outcome that is usually associated to that stimulus. I say, oh, this outcome is really good. And this outcome is really good is what is being activated there during the stimulus. This is like a goal-directed way of seeing this value effect. Or could be that because of learning how the stimulus is perceived in a very data-driven way, so it's not top-down, it's more bottom-up, could be that you see that this stimuli like more salient, or there is like a perceptual gain in order to attend or process this high-value stimulus. So the first interpretation is like the goal-directed interpretation of this effect, and the second one would be like the more automatic, habitual way. This is interesting because previous papers have suggested that because of reward, you can change how you perceive things, and you can prioritize some stimuli over the other if they are, related with high value reward. So we thought that this is very interesting. We wanted to study this habit versus goal-directed nature of this stimuli, but because we came from associative learning, we wanted to use the standard test used to assess if something is habitual or goal-directed. That is the outcome devaluation test. This is the test that people who is working in animals are using all the time, and it's like the gold standard in the field. And its logic is a direct consequence of the definition of what is a goal-directed behavior or a habitual response. So it's not because I like this test, and that it's based in the definition of what is an habit or a goal-directed response. So let me explain to you in what is the logic of the outcome devaluation test. So when we use this test, the first thing that we need our animals to learn in a reinforcement learning paradigm. In this example, there's a rat, but we use the students, obviously. So this animal is pressing the bar in order to get cheese when it sees a light on the box. After the training, we change the value of the outcome of the food in this example. We can do this in different ways. It's not important. The thing is that the animal, it doesn't want the food anymore, okay? And we actually test that. So we offer, so to speak, we offer the animal the outcome, the reward, the food, and we can check if they eat or not, if they pick that food or not. Obviously, what we expect is that they say, no, thank you, I don't want cheese anymore. And after that, we can do our test for goal-directed behavior. that is exactly the same that the first reinforcement learning trials, but without any reward in extinction. If the rate of responses go down, in that case, that behavior is controlled by the goal-directed system, okay? Because the animal have a ongoing representation of the value of the outcome and can act in consequence of that, of the actual value of the outcome. But if the responses are not changed after the devaluation, then we can infer that probably these behaviors are produced by the habit system. So we use the same logic in an EEG experiment with participants, with human participants, with students. Okay, was a bit of a challenge, but I think we did a nice job here. Now we have our participants doing again a stimulus response outcome learning task, but now we presented just one stimulus in each trial. All the stimuli were perfectly predictive of the correct response, so the design is simpler. And again, obviously, we manipulated the value of the outcome because we are interested in this reward-related bias. As I say, the design is much simpler. We had only two different stimuli. The stimulus high, which was related with a high value outcome, which was worth 100 points all the time, really good, but not during the evaluation. In some blocks, we changed the value of this outcome from 100 to 0. So, and we call these blocks the evaluation of the high value outcome block. Okay. We also had a low value stimulus with a low value outcome, just 1 point, and we also devalued this outcome in some blocks. But what is more interesting is the devaluation of the high value. Yeah, we have many trials. One thing about the EEG is that you need a lot of trials to get a good signal. So these experiments are quite boring. And again, the reward was points, but money at the end of the experiment. This is the task that we use during the reinforcement learning trials. We have many reinforcement learning trials. We presented this cookie in the center of the screen. This was the stimulus. The participant had to give the cookie to one of these two aliens. These are the two response options. And they have to press left or right. And after a correct response, they get a diamond. And there were two diamonds, the high value diamond and the low value diamond. And this interrogation, these question marks here are because during the evaluation, we didn't inform trial by trial about the value of the diamonds, trying to simulate the extinction situation that is used in animals. So this is for the reinforcement learning trials. We also simulate these free consumption trials. And for our free consumption trials, the participant had to pick one of the two diamonds, and they got the points of that diamond, and that's all. Obviously, what the logic here, what is rational, is to pick all the time the high value diamond because it's worth 100 points. But if you are in the evaluation of the high value diamond block, you should pick the other one. Okay, this way we could check if the participants were also understanding the instruction and all these things. So it's a bit complicated. We have three different blocks: the no devaluation blocks, in which all the diamonds have the same, the usual value; the evaluation of the high value outcome, in which this outcome, the high value outcome, was devalued; the evaluation of the low value outcome, in which the low value outcome was devalued. And in all these three blocks, we have all the time two stimuli, although only one was present in every trial. Or the stimulus high, which is also predictive of the high value outcome or the stimulus low. So, results. This is what happened in the behavior. What you can see here is that accuracy was really good. It's around 95% of correct responses, but still we have an interaction here. The accuracy was better for the stimulus high trial. So when the participants know that they can get a really good outcome, they put more effort in that and they made these responses better. But this was here this way in the no devaluation and the devaluation, the low outcome. But when we devaluate the high value outcome, you can see that the bars inverse, they reverse, and they put more effort in the low trials as compared with the other. And this is saying to us that the participants are actually coding the actual value of the outcome every trial. And they know about the devaluation here, okay? We didn't see anything in response time. And in consumption trials, we have more information that, our manipulation is working because they pick all the time the good diamond, but not when that good diamond is devalued. When we devalue the good diamond, they stop picking that diamond. What about the EEG? Again, we are looking here the activity during the presentation of these two stimulus, the two stimuli, the high value and the low value stimulus. Well, what we see is a really rapid effect of value, peaking around 170 milliseconds, something like that. And this effect distinguishes between the high value and the low value stimulus. Okay, those stimulus which are usually associated with the high value or the low value outcome. We think that this is the P1 component here, because it's occipital and for the timing too. And what is really interesting is that this P1 effect was evident in the three blocks, in the three type of blocks, even when the high value outcome was devalued. So in these trials, this diamond is worth 0 points. This one, the green, but even it's worth 0 points. It's the worst outcome that you can get here. You could see this larger P1 for that stimulus as compared with the low value stimulus. Okay, so it's inflexible. We also analyze what happened during the rest of the presentation of the stimulus. This is a mass univariate analysis, and we corrected the results using FDR. And what you can see, the lines are the difference between the high and the low stimulus. And here we mark when is significant, when this difference is significant. And we made the difference of the difference here. So this is like the interaction between our two factors. This is a lot of information. What is more interesting here is that we see an interaction between our two factors around 400 milliseconds after the presentation of the stimulus in occipital channels, and also around 600 milliseconds in more centroparietal channels. What's the meaning of this? Well, what it seems is happening is that the effect of value is take what direction when we devalued one outcome and took the other direction when we devalued the other outcome. So this is like larger for the high than for the low, and here is larger for the low than for the high. So basically, this is the effect of value is dependent of the ongoing value of the outcome. It's affected by the devaluation. And remember that the P1 wasn't affected by the devaluation. So what we have here is first this inflexible cache value activation during the first part of the presentation, and after that some activation that it behaves like a goal-directed process is affected by the devaluation of the outcome. So that's it. We have these two different value effects. The first that is inflexible, and the second that is goal-directed. And we think that this first inflexible response is what we can call like attention habit. So it's an attentional response, it's a perceptual gain that is inflexible in the same way that the habits are inflexible when we change the value of the outcomes. Okay, so we have this attention habit, if you like, happening in our second study. And when we wonder for our third study is, okay, we are calling this an attention habit, but to what extent is this effect related with the real habits, like the over behavior habits? If we have a situation in which we expect really strong stimulus-response associations, this attention habit is going to be stronger in that situation if we compare the situation with another with really weak stimulus-response links. So how these two systems are related. And we explored this. We used the same task. We didn't need outcome devaluation test for this experiment. We again manipulated the outcome value. And what we did different is this blocks manipulation. We have fixed and random blocks. In the fixed blocks, the aliens, the two response options, were always in the same positions, like the green at the left and the orange at the right. And this should allow the formation of really strong stimulus response links. At least if we compare the situation with the random block in which the position of the aliens were changing all the time. So this changing thing is going to hinder the formation of stimulus response links, at least as compared with the fixed position. So we have two conditions, the fixed and the random, with the strength of the stimulus response links, which are different. And we are going to look this attention habit effect see if it's different between these two conditions. I have to say that the stimuli that we use in each of these blocks, or this type of block, were different. So the cookie 1 and 2 were always in fixed location block, and the 3 and 4 in the random location block. Okay. 48 participants in a lot of trials. Okay. As I say, the procedure was pretty much the same, the cookie, the aliens, etc. And here we have the behavioral results. What we see here is the participant had better performance in the fixed block, okay, in the fixed blocks, you see more accuracy and lower response times, and also in high value trials. So people put more effort in the high value trials than in the low value trials, which makes sense. For the EEG signal, we analyze different components, but the two that show interesting results were the P1 and the P3. You can see when we collapse all the different factors and we make this grand average, the P1 was obviously occipital, but our P3 was also occipital. This was similar to some results in the second study, that we have a P3 effect in occipital sites. So we analyzed these occipital channels and also the same channels that we analyzed in the previous study, in the study 2. And what we obtain is a significant effect of block. So we are comparing fixed versus random blocks here. And this effect was significant at P1 and also in P3, but you see that the direction of the effect is different. And regarding the value effect was only significant at P3. No, it wasn't significant at P1. It was significant at P3, and it was like a general effect was significant in occipitals, but also in central parietal channels. So these are like the waveforms, and you can see here the P1 effect. Well, it's not super clear, but there is like a fixed. The random conditions have larger P1 than the fixed one, and you can see here the value effect at P set. You see the high value stimulus have more P3 than the low value stimulus. So what we have here is that outcome value again modulated the processing of the stimulus, but also our manipulation of the strength of the stimulus responding also affected how we process the stimulus. Both factors modulated this cortical activity. It seems that the response information was activated first. It was really rapid, around 100 milliseconds, and then both value and response have effects around P3. The value effect, so our value effect was not affected by the strength of the stimulus response of the learning. There wasn't no interaction. And this was the result that we were expecting. We were expecting that the value effect should be larger in the fixed block, but there was no sign of this interaction. So maybe learning stimulus response associations is independent of learning this reward related bias of this stimulus value bias. Maybe the attentional habits are not really related with the response, over response habits. We did not see a value effect in the P1 as in the second study, and this was a surprising effect for us. Maybe because we are not the only lab obtaining this effect at P1, so it should be there. And maybe this jumping from the fixed to the random blocks interferes somehow with the formation of these attention habits. We don't know this. So, wrapping up very quickly, we see that response-related information affected the cortical responses to the stimulus. The predictive stimulus was elicited larger P2 than the non-predictive in the first study. And in the third study, the stimuli random blocks elicited larger P1 than those in fixed blocks. We are not sure if these two things are produced by the same mechanism. Probably not, because the manipulations were very different and the activities were also very different. So maybe there are two different things going on here. Also, the value of the outcome also affected the cortical response to this stimuli. In all the studies, high-value stimuli produce larger ERP components than low-value stimuli. In the second study, we showed that this effect can take like the form of habitual thing, can be activated very rapid in a very inflexible way. But the learning of this attention habit maybe is not related with learning strong stimulus response associations. And I think that is more related with Pavlovian learning, with learning stimulus outcome associations. So, when these two pieces of information were manipulated in the same experiment, their response-related modulation happened before the outcome value effects. So maybe there is some kind of priority there. And in the first study, we see that by the end of the presentation of the stimuli, these two pieces of information are integrated. So this is my last slide, we see that discriminative stimuli carry a lot of information that is very valuable for us, and we learn that information through reinforcement learning. We can study these learning processes using EEG. We can see how the brain responses change because of this learning. We have seen that response-related information can be activated very quickly, probably before outcome value information, but outcome value information can be also activated very quickly when they are attention habits. That is responses which take place even when the outcome is no longer desired. And that's it. These are all my co-authors and collaborators for this experiment. So very thank you so much to them. I will be very happy answering your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, David. It was a really nice talk.
Thank you.
Muy bien, muy bien. And now it's time for questions. And Tony just wrote on the chat like 3 questions for you, but left. So he apologized for leaving and threw there the stone for you. So maybe if you go to the chat, you can read them and maybe give an answer to all of us.
Maybe can do this like at the end, because I need to read this.
Oh, as you wish.
Oh.
Then maybe we can move to other attendees' questions. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand and we will give you access to the microphone and video. Yeah, Ruth?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I thank you very much. That was super interesting. I was wondering, actually, when you were presenting the experiments that you were going to do, I was expecting that maybe you were going to have a look at the development of the effects through time. I don't know if you ever had a look at that, in the sense that habit effects are usually something that develops with time. So initially you shouldn't see these effects, and then you could see how the different factors interact to be able to observe, I mean, that these habit effects.
Yeah, well, this is the challenging part of this research, because these are learning processes. So we acquire all these meanings during the experiment, and it's quite interesting to see what is happening from each learning being from one learning being to the next one. But at the same time, you need a lot of signal to do EEG to reduce the noise. But learning can be really quick. So we did something like that in my first experiment using EEG that I did there in Barcelona with Tony and Estela. And that was a 5 hours experiment, because the participant had to do like 30 times the same experiment with different stimuli, because we need like the learning experience over and over. So they learn something and we change the stimuli, they have to learn another thing, they have to learn. And that way we reproduce like a learning curve, but for the EEG signal. I haven't done that again, and I probably never will do that again, because it was a learning experience for me too. Yeah, it's
No,
a challenge. It's very interesting, but it's not easy to do, you know, to do with EEG.
Well, I was actually asking this in the sense that, well, maybe what I would be interested in is to know your opinion about how these effects develop, in the sense that the integration about the value and the predictive and the prediction of the stimuli and that are integrated maybe is something that does not happen from the beginning, that you may have these two effects that
Yeah.
are independent, and then with time you have this integration, that this effect of integration that happens.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. That's a different question. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting. Maybe you need like to learn first which one is the correct response, and after that you can start to worry about the value of the outcome, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know, but it's quite interesting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Tony Cunillera.
Hi, nice to see you. I see that you are in a really good shape.
You too.
I enjoyed your talk. Thank you for your talk and to share your wide knowledge. I'm curious if just first question. Actually, I was wondering the same question. I was that rude, but I'm not going to do the same question again. I think that the answer of a 5-hour experiment is good enough. And I was thinking about if you are familiar with the incentive sensitization theory of addiction of Berridge and Robinson. This theory separates the liking and the wanting aspects of reward. And I don't know if you have tried to fit your data with this theory, because it looks like the attention habit it's more related with the wanting. So it's the motivational drive that take you to respond, while you can separate that from the liking, so the value of the reward. I don't know if you are familiar to that, or can you comment something with this theory, or sorry if I
no it's I know it's actually it's a really good question. Yeah, I know the theory. So it's different. The wanting is more related with like the expectation of getting the reward, and the liking more about the when you get the reward and you like consume. Is that right? No? It's like more the consummatory part.
Well, more or less, you can separate both things. You can still be in something and you say you don't like it anymore, or something like that. I mean, there are two aspects of reward, but I was wondering if the wanting could be more represented in this fast modulation of this component, this P1 and so, because it will be more rated with attention, and the P3 will be more with the like. I don't know. Probably you can take a look to this and probably you like it, the theory. I don't know.
No, it's very interesting. I think the people that invented this term, like the attention habit, they have this theory in mind, although they didn't directly work with like drug addicts and stuff. But I think that they use this incentive salience theory in order to say, okay, these inflexible attentional responses are there. You can see people where there is, it's I think that it makes sense to say what you say, that the attention habit thing is related with the wanting in this theory. But in my knowledge, there is not a lot of research actually looking at, because this is a theory of drug use, if that is correct.
Well, it can be extended to eating behavior and any kind of well, addiction. What is addiction? You look 3 or 4
Yeah.
times per hour to your mobile. Is also an addiction, or is just an habit that you do that?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
can be
Well,
extended.
yeah. I think that you're right. It makes a lot of sense, and other people have connected these dots for me in the past. So I think so. But having said that, I don't know this literature perfectly. So maybe, but I think that there are people looking at drug addicts and, binge eating disorder and these kind of things.
If you finally come to Barcelona, we can share some ideas about this.
Say, we can discuss about drugs. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the talk. Bye bye.
Okay, any other questions?
So maybe we can.
His hand raised. Okay, yes, I would say so, yeah. If you want, I can read aloud the question as if I was Tony.
Okay.
He says, I am curious on the first results of study 1, the fact that it is fully predictive. The presentation of the first stimulus will be acting as a predictive feedback. Subjects knows that they are going to win or lose PS info. To which extent what you are seeing is positive versus negative effects, positive feedback P3 like gain component, FRN negative outcome, we normally see in the feedback stimuli. Is feedback value anticipated or savored?
Well, I think that I agree. I think that the second component that we see in the first study is pretty much like the feedback-related negativity or feedback of, well, the FRN, but happening during the presentation of the stimuli. So yeah, I agree with that. I don't know how can we test if this is for real or not, but because of the distribution of the component of the timing, I think that Tony is right here. At least we getting this effect that we usually see this effect in the feedback, but when in a situation which is fully predictive, with learning, this feedback-related negativity transfer to the presentation of the predictive stimuli. So yes, I think this the anticipation of the feedback what we are seeing there.
Okay. The second question, I am curious on the negativity. NS, non-predictive value, you are seeing larger negativity? Might be a reflex of the SPN, like because the uncertainty, so I keep attention tuned?
Yeah, it's true that there is a negativity for the non-predictive, or maybe it's a positivity for the too predictive. So there's no way to know what's there. I don't know about the SPN because the SPN is kind of a slow component. But yeah, maybe if we decompose the signal, we can see like time frequency or something like that, we could answer this question more properly. But it's a very interesting suggestion.
Okay, and the last one, did you see any effect for feedback-related components when you trigger at the outcome stage for PS trials? I might predict the effect is no more there for the PS trials.
Yeah, this is related with the first one. We didn't. Obviously I analyzed the feedback here because I started as a feedback guy. So, but we didn't see anything interesting there. So maybe this is answering this question. We didn't see interesting effects during the feedback time. So maybe what we see here is this transfer that I have mentioned, that with training, all the things that usually happen during the feedback start to happen during the presentation of the stimuli. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. If no one else has any other question, yeah, Paula, do you have? Okay, I'm going to give the microphone to Paula. Oops. Oh, what happened? Vale, ya está. Paula, you should have access to microphone and camera because she has a question, but it's nicer if she, yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. It was great.
Thank you.
So yeah, I was just kind of curious because of if you've had any idea of individual differences that could maybe contribute to these responses to the stimuli that you were seeing.
Yeah, I think that regarding anhedonia, because you have wrote this in the chat, there are people studying how anhedonia, people with anhedonia process like the feedback, the outcome, or different rewards, and they have showed that these components related with the outcome, with the feedback, are reduced, if I'm not wrong, are reduced in people with anhedonia. So, as we have mentioned before with the question from Tony, maybe this same pattern is we can reproduce the same pattern in the processing of the stimulus, in the predictive stimulus. So if this stimulus is anticipating, like savoring what is your reward, we should see, as you suggest, an effect, individual differences regarding this anhedonia. So people with anhedonia, maybe they have like little, smaller effects or something like that, or maybe they don't develop this very rapid attention habit, but they develop their goal, because in a cognitive way, they probably can anticipate what is the future. They are going to get this or that outcome. So my prediction is that, yeah, these people probably have smaller responses at the beginning of the presentation of the stimulus, but they are going to have the same goal-directed activity around in P3 or something like that.
Very cool. Yeah, there's also all this kind of research on like sign tracking and goal tracking and this kind of concept. And I was wondering if maybe this like attention kind of habit response would be more related to someone who's a sign tracker versus a goal tracker. But I don't really know of a good like human method for testing for sign tracking and goal tracking in humans.
Well, there are very recent papers. I think that it's a Nature Human Behavior paper from the last year or something like that. They do that. They divided the sample in sign trackers and goal trackers, and they looked. I can't remember if they did like fMRI. It's a really cool paper. I almost forgot everything about it, but there are really clever people doing these things now.
I will look into that.
Yeah. Let me know if you can find the paper, and I have a look.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Question? Okay. Then I think we may leave the session here. And thank again, David. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a vosotros y gracias a Ruth y a toda la gente del lab. A ver si nos vemos pronto.
Genial.